What's happening, everybody? It's Jeff Lightsy Jr. here with the Black Boss Channel. Thank you guys for the continued support. Continue to hit the like, share, subscribe, and the notification bell because we upload just about every day. Now, this is a real topic we're about to dive into because it's some pretty big news and it's very significant to our people, our culture. A lot of our people are locked up right now on a lot of these charges. A lot of our culture, a big part of who we are, a big chunk of people who could be contributing to what we're doing here on the outside are currently in prison for marijuana, right? And so it looks like the government, the US government, is taking one step closer to doing what we all knew they should have done a very, very long time ago, and that is decriminalize marijuana. So this is what just happened, and we're gonna dive into this article together because we're gonna process this together. And I want you guys to give comments and leave feedback. I won't be in here very long, and I'm sure we'll touch this topic a number of times, but we all got to dive into the decriminalization of marijuana that should have taken place a century ago, but is now looking like it's starting to take place or going in that direction for the United States. So just about 2 hours ago or so, for those who don't know, just about 2 hours or so ago, the United States House of Representatives passed a bill or an act that would remove marijuana, or cannabis is what it's really called. I'll dive into why they call it marijuana in a minute, but they passed an act to remove cannabis from the Controlled Substance Act, right? So it would decriminalize it. Basically, weed, you wouldn't get arrested for weed at the federal level. Now, there's some tricky language in there, and we'll dive into that some more later. But as of right now, the United States House of Representatives are looking to remove cannabis from the Controlled Act. You won't be arrested for cannabis, so they say. But we'll read into it. Let's read an article together from, I'm going to share my screen, from NBC. This is the NBC News. Let's see. House passes historic bill. Okay, so because a lot of people are going crazy about this. So this is from NBC News. For those who don't know, it looked like they passed the bill. So it was 228 yeses, 168 no's, and 39 people that abstained. So that's how the bill passed. It got quite a bit margin, but you got to remember the Democrats are in office; they control the House. So that's pretty much how that bill passed. So it says, as the cannabis industry continues to take root state by state, the House of Representatives voted in favor of removing marijuana from the Federal Controlled Substance Act. The House voted Friday on the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, or MORE Act, which decriminalizes cannabis and clears the way to erase nonviolent federal marijuana convictions. The Senate is likely to approve the bill. The MORE Act also creates the pathway of ownership opportunities in the emerging industry, allows veterans to obtain medical cannabis recommendations for veteran affairs, and establishes, so, people vote Friday was the first time a full chamber of Congress has taken up the issue of federally decriminalizing cannabis. Of the vote count, 222 Democrats were in favor of passing the MORE Act, 6 were against it. 5 Republicans voted in favor, 158 against it. So, I mean, that's not surprising there. And we got some quotes by some people. Okay, so that cannabis won big on election day last month. Voters in 5 states, Arizona, New Jersey, South Dakota, Montana, Mississippi, approved measures to legalize some form of marijuana. Now, 15 states, 2 territories, and Washington, D.C. have legalized recreational cannabis, while 34 states and 2 territories allow medical marijuana. Okay, so let's dive into some of this, right? Let's dive into some of this. Be sure to hit the like, share, subscribe, the thumbs up button, notification bell, because we upload all the time. But this is going to be interesting because they're saying it looks like that the House passed it, and they think that the Senate will pass it. And it's all quite interesting. Don't you guys find this really interesting? Because I do. That this bill was passed right before the runoff in Georgia for the control of the Senate, right? So I think this is a ploy by the liberals, and a good one, the Democrats, to come out and say, hey, look, we decriminalizing cannabis. We're decriminalizing weed. We're going to let nonviolent offenders out. And so that is a ploy to get people to vote for them. That is, and it's a smart one, because it's probably going to work, right? Like, it's probably going to work. I don't know when the vote in the Senate will pass. And granted, you got to remember, so it passed the House. it has to pass the Senate, and then it has to get signed by the president. That's how government works. It don't just because the House passed it doesn't mean that it's going to enact. It passed the House, it has to go through the Senate and get voted on in the Senate, and then it has to pass. It has to be signed by the president, so it has to be signed by Joe Biden, essentially. So all of this is really crazy, because we got to think about how many of our brothers, how many of our sisters, how many of our uncles, how many of our aunties, our mothers, our fathers are behind bars, are in federal prison right now for weed. Like, there is a large amount of our people who are currently locked up for weed. Will they be let out? Well, it says that they're considering it. But to me, this seems like more of a ploy for people to garner revenue than to release our people. Think about that. All these black folks been getting locked up. I was reading statistics about the racial disparity of being arrested with weed if you're black and white, and it's 4-to-1. 4 times as many black folk. White people and black folk smoke weed just alike, right? Like, white people and black folk, they both smoke weed the same amount. I remember I did a video back in March about how having a ban on weed in sports was racist. And I basically talked about how the only reason why weed is illegal in America was because back in the early 1900s, Mexicans were bringing weed over to America, right? Mexicans had all this weed, and white folks, like the people in government, were saying that the weed was manipulating their women to sleep with black men, to sleep with Mexicans. And so they had to put a ban on weed, and they even changed the name from cannabis, because it's really called cannabis. Like, that's the technical term, is cannabis. So they changed the name from cannabis to marijuana, and then it's somewhere down the line it was kind of turned into weed to try to they turned it to marijuana to make it sound more Mexican and make it more scary. It's like, oh, the big scary Mexican or big scary black man is going to get you when you're high on the marijuana. Like, don't take their drug. You're going to be susceptible to getting raped or to getting, whatever. And so that's how the government, this is coming from the History Channel. I researched this. This is crazy. This came from the History Channel, and that is how they were able to pass laws to make cannabis illegal in America. And then you lock up all the, brown and black folks for smoking it, right? So that's what's happening. That's why weed is looked at the way it is now. But now you're getting a tide, right? All of these states are making all of this money on the cannabis industry, but there's still black folks behind bars for the same stuff. The stuff that is making this country hundreds of millions and billions of dollars every single year. Every single year. Think about all these states. All these states that have, how many states is weed legal in now? All of these states that have passed weed that is now legal in their state is making hundreds of millions and probably billions of dollars on it. So what is the U.S. government seeing right now? Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. So what is the U.S. government seeing? Me, I want my people free. That's what I want. All them black folks that are behind bars on federal charges for trafficking marijuana or whatever, I want those folks, the nonviolent folks, let out. Because now the U.S. government is making hundreds of billions of dollars. And I think one way that the Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, with the Democrat-led government, because you put this bill out right before the runoff in Georgia, right? So you put this out, and what is it back? It's backed by a bunch of Democrats who voted to pass this bill. So you put this bill out, you let it know, hey, we're releasing all the folks in jail right now on weed charges. So you put it out right before the runoff. So the Democrats are gaining steam. And then you go to the runoff, and you probably win it because of this. It's just a smart thing. Politics is a crazy game because you had, 400 years to do this. But it's critical that you do it right before the runoff in Georgia. So now you do it right before the runoff in Georgia. And now you get those Georgia folks that will probably have a lot of family members, because Georgia is a rural state. Let's not act like Georgia ain't the South. Georgia is a rural state. You get those folks to vote. You get those folks to vote in your favor because they want their folks out on weed too. There's probably a lot of black Georgia men and women behind bars on weed charges. So you get them out and you push those two Democratic Senate candidates into office. I think it's more about revenue than letting black folks out of prison. That's my thing, because even me listening to this and watching it and reading about it, it's like, yo, Like, this is big news because we could really be making a change and getting a lot of innocent black folks out of prison. But I mean, me and this brother right here, Mr. James, is all about for them the revenue. You're exactly right. There is so much money in the cannabis industry. I just read how many states have legalized it now. For some reason I can't find it. I literally just read it. All of these states, but weed, crack, and not cocaine, but weed and crack were considered the black drugs, right? Like, they've always really kind of be considered the black drugs. And so when the 70s and the 80s, you had the war on drugs, when the drugs were actually getting fed by the government. Let me give you a quick history lesson real quick, because for those who watch like shows like Snowfall or have watched some of these big time shows, y'all kind of know this stuff already, that really dive into the war on drugs. The war on drugs, see, that's the thing. They try to confuse you with the 80s, the late 70s, really the 80s, the Reagan era, about the crack epidemic and the war on drugs. Here's the thing. Black folks didn't have coca plants. Black folks couldn't make drugs. It was flown into your communities in California, your communities in New York, your communities in Chicago. The black folks didn't have access to this stuff. The government used the drug money for wars overseas. The government put the drugs in your communities. This is documented. For those who don't know, the government put the drugs in your community. So the war on drugs was literally the war on yourself. like the government was saying, it was preaching this war on drugs when the CIA was putting drugs in your community and giving it to these drug dealers, these kingpins, and some of the ones that you know from way back in the 60s, I mean the 70s and 80s, but that they didn't have access to this stuff. It was fed to them by the US government. That's not me making it up. That's facts. You can look it up. So now we fast forward up to 2020, right? When weed is legal in all of these states, led by California, but legal in 30 states across the country. I just read it. All of these states. And some reason, for whatever reason, it was still federally illegal. So you could still federally get arrested in places like here, like in Kentucky. You can't have no weed on you in Kentucky. You're gonna go to jail. It's not, you're gonna go to jail. I don't care if it's 2 pounds or a blunt. Like, you are going to jail. So that is what's so crazy. But now at the federal level, they see all of this money that Denver, that California, that DC, that all of these different places are getting. Now they want to decriminalize it. Now, while there's a Senate race where the Democratic Party can have control of the presidency, the House, and the Senate if they win those 2 seats in Georgia, now we're going to decriminalize it. It's not by coincidence, everybody. It's not by coincidence at all. All I want, me personally, I can't speak for y'all, but all I want is them to let our folks out of prison. Let our folks out of prison for these drug charges that y'all souped up and that y'all made. Let me see how many states right now is weed legal in. Cannabis election day. So look, I'm gonna reread this part because I felt like this part was very significant. This was huge. This was really big in part of the article I just read from NBC. I'm gonna read it again. Cannabis won big on election day last month. Voters in 5 states, Arizona, New Jersey, South Dakota, Montana, Mississippi, approved measures to legalize some form of marijuana. Now, 15 states, 2 territories, Washington, D.C. have legislated recreational cannabis, while 34 states and 2 territories allow medical marijuana. So 15 states. That means 15 states recreational. As you all know, you can walk down the street in places like California, in places like, I don't remember every state, because like I said, I live here in Kentucky and you can't do that. So, but you can walk down the street with a blunt in hand and say what's up to the feds, like say what's up to the cops. That's not allowed everywhere. But 15 states across this country it is. But there's probably people in those jails at those states in jail for marijuana. Like, how does that make sense? Think about this. In 15 states in this country, 15 in the United States, in 15 states, you can walk down the street with a joint in your hand, with a blunt in your hand, and say what's up to your local officer. 15. But there's probably black people in those same states behind bars for marijuana. How does that make sense? How does that make sense? That makes no. I mean, I'm smiling, but it's really sad. How that makes no sense at all. And in 34 states, you can use it for medical uses when it's been proven. That's the thing. That's the thing. Folks have known since the 1600s that marijuana could be used to relieve pain, to relieve stress. It's used in medicine to infuse it. Like, we've known this for centuries. But here in the United States, it is looked down because the black and brown people were the ones that were promoting it, were the ones that were using it. And they were scared that their women would fall in love with black people, or you would manipulate their women to mess with black folks. That's not, no, it's not it at all. But I mean, I don't know. But this is going to be a big ploy. But my thing is, my number one thing with this, be sure to hit the like, share, subscribe, guys, because we have to have this conversation. And leave your hashtag B1s in the chat. Hashtag B1, because this is Black First. We're having a black conversation. And this is something that's big. Like, this is something that really could affect generations of families down the line. Generations of family. Like we could be restoring families across this country if this passes, right? Like, we could really bring home a lot of, like I said, fathers, a lot of mothers, and we could prevent a lot of our future doctors or lawyers or broadcasters or surgeons or black business owners. We could prevent a lot of them from going to jail. We could prevent a whole lot of them from going to jail with weed being legalized, right? Like, think about how many black folks and how many black businesses and how much black revenue is sitting in a cell right now because they got caught with some weed. Think about how many lives were ruined. Right? Think about how many lives, because once you become a convicted felon, your life is pretty much over. Like, it's almost eradicated. They tried to eradicate your life when you were convicted as a felon. Think about it. Like, you are an indentured servant. You're almost like litigated to go back to a life of crime if you are convicted of something as small as having weed. Like, not to distribute. You're not distributing. Like, it's not to distribute. You're just using it for medication to relieve stress, to relieve some pain or whatever, and you were caught with it, and now you're a convicted felon, and your life, it's almost ruined. Like, it's altered greatly. If at the very least, it's altered greatly because for whatever reason you can't get a job, you can't get a loan, you can't buy a house, you can't buy a car. Like, all of those things happen when you become, like, those things become extremely difficult after you go to jail. And there's a lot of our people that are behind bars for stuff like this, man. This topic got me hype, y'all. This topic's got me really hyped because it looks like it's gonna pass. It passed the House. So, once again, for those who coming in late, we are talking about the United States House of Representatives have decriminalized cannabis. So they've decriminalized weed at the federal level, and now it will go to the Senate, and it looks like it'll pass the Senate. Remember, the Democrats have two Senate, well, not just the Democrats, I keep saying the Democrats, but it's actually two Senate seats. Excuse me. Two Senate seats are open in Georgia. The Democrats are going to try to ride this wave of this bill passing at the House, ride this wave into getting those two seats in Georgia, because the Democrats are the ones who voted yes to decriminalizing marijuana. So when you do that, and you have a Senate runoff in January in Georgia, they're going to try to ride that wave into winning those two Senate seats. And I think it's going to work. I really do. Because this is big. Like, people like me who really don't go too far right, too far left, like, I'm hype about it. Because I know there's a lot of families that could be restored by bringing our people home. Now, what we have to remember, if Biden doesn't let them out, I mean, this is funny because, like, this is true. Because once again, you got to remember Joe Biden, how it works. It passes the House, it passes the Senate, and then the president must sign off on it. You can't veto it. But there's no way in hell I believe Joe Biden would veto a bill like this if it passes the Senate. It passed the House, it passes the Senate. I don't think there's no way in hell Biden would like, no, because the Democrats will be riding a crazy wave. They'd be riding a great wave. Be sure to hit the like, share, subscribe, and the thumbs up button, guys. They would be riding a crazy wave into the presidency. Now, what we have to remember, that just because something passes federally, your states still have the obligation to keep their same laws. They don't have to change. The states don't have to change their laws. So, for example, how it's legal federally. I mean, in 34 states or 35 states or whatever we just read. States like mine, Kentucky, just because it passes federally doesn't mean I don't mean they got to pass marijuana at the state level. It can still be banned at the state level. That's where they get you. That's where it gets sad. Because then you're in state jails. You can still go to jail for having weed, even if it passes at the federal level. Now you're saying, Jeff, like who in the hell would who would fight that, right? Like why would a state fight against the federal government? Because there's still certain folks running the states, y'all. like there's certain folks still running the states. And certain folks don't want marijuana competing with what they got going on, right? For whatever, like, so in my state, for example, in Kentucky, they have a big hemp industry. And hemp is like baby weed. I don't even know what to call it. Like hemp is like the lowest grade. It has no THC. So THC in weed is what gets you high, right? Hemp has a very low dosage of THC. So that's why they look at hemp as like this great, like, oh, it's a great alternative. It's not the same. And like they put hemp in their CBD oils and stuff like that. It's like it does the same thing. It doesn't. It's not the same. But you know, it is what it is. That is what's like mass promoted here in Kentucky. So that is why states like Kentucky, and I'm sure states like Alabama and maybe in Georgia, but that's why it's critical for them to get those 2 Senate seats. But Alabama, I know my state here in Kentucky, probably like a Texas, you know, those southern states, those Bible Belt states are going to fight even at the state level, even if this passes federally. So there will still be men and women, particularly black men and women. We focus so much on on us because they arrest us so much more, right? I'm about to read you some statistics, man, because this stuff's going to kind of blow you away, right? This stuff is going to kind of blow you away, and I'm going to show you my screen about the marijuana numbers in the United States, because I mean, weed, like I said, the weed arrests were made to keep us enslaved, man. It's part of like the whole systemic racism stuff. So most people police are arresting aren't kingpins. So this is 50%, 52% of all drug arrests in 2010 were for marijuana. I'm sure it's still the same. So these are statistics from the ACLU. Over 7 million people were busted for having pot from 2001 to 2010. Think about, so if 7 million people were busted, 5 of them were black. 5 million people were black. Think about those 5 million families that could be drastically affected by something like this. And 30 was arrested every 37 seconds. Blacks and whites use pot the same rate. So this is what I really wanted y'all to see, right? So I don't know. I know it's probably kind of hard to see, but the percentages, white people use weed more than black. Like, think about that. Like, think about if you ask someone randomly, who do you think are the biggest weed consumers in America? And of course, they're going to say black folks, because weed is promoted in music, and it's promoted in our movies, and it's promoted in the media that shows black folks. When you think of somebody smoking weed, you think of somebody black, right? But that's not the case. That's really not the case at all. Because across the board, white people statistically, not just like per capita, but actually percentage-wise, more white people use marijuana than black. That might sound crazy, but it's the truth. These are stats. These aren't just me talking. These are actual stats. But look at this. So watch how this graph changes on the next slide. It says blacks and whites use pot about the same rate, but these busts aren't happening on every block. Now watch this very next slide. Blacks have been nearly 4 times more likely than whites to be arrested for marijuana possession. Look at the white. Oh my God. Look at the white part of the chart and the black part of the chart. I mean, look how great. Let's go back, because this is arrest versus usage. So the black arrests are through the roof, through the freaking roof. Look at the usage, though. The white part of the chart is higher than the black. So white folks between ages 18 and 25 use weed, smoke weed, use it, whatever, they intake it more than black folks. But the arrest, 4 times more likely. Think about all of the families that have been drastically affected, y'all. Think about how your family potentially has been affected by this. This isn't, I'm not making this up. I am not making this up. This is incredible. These numbers are just simply insane. In Iowa and DC, Minnesota, and Illinois, blacks are 17 to, so this is before so this is a little dated because this is back in 2010. But these are some of the disparities because we know now DC actually weed is legal. But in some of these states, like my state, Kentucky's on there. Some of these states, how many times more likely are black folks to be arrested for weed than white folks? In Iowa, it's 8 times more likely. Minnesota, over 7 times. Illinois, over 7 times. Wisconsin, 6 times. Kentucky, 6 times. Like 6 times more likely. I mean, this is so crazy. States waste, look at this big old number. $3 billion. States waste $3 billion. $3 billion enforcing marijuana laws every year. Over $3 billion are wasted enforcing marijuana laws. And obviously over 50% of Americans believe weed should be legalized. And now we're heading, we're one more step in that direction. This could be a historic day. It will be. I think it will be soon enough. I think simply because with those 2 Senate seats on the line, and the Democrats want those seats really back so they can have control of the presidency, the House, and the Senate. This is going to pass the Senate, and Joe Biden in January is gonna sign off on this. And but before Joe Biden becomes the president, they're going to promote the hell out of this. That's why people like me are going to talk about it, because this could be, I mean, think about all the families, all the black businesses, all the revenue, all the doctors, all the lawyers, all the therapists, all the, pick your favorite, occupation or career that could be, that a lot of these black folks could never become after they were caught with having weed and sent to jail, and some of them sent to prison. Like there's so many outstanding black people whose lives were forever changed just for getting busted for a joint, man. And so that's where my thing is. Will Joe Biden, will Kamala Harris, will these Democrats who say they love black people so much, will the Democrats who say they love black people so much, all these folks that's Black Lives Matter and all this stuff, will they do what's right by black folks? That's all I care about. And this is a step in that direction. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Will they do right by our people? And be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe, because this is a conversation that needs to be had. This is a conversation that needs to be heard. Remember that the ban of weed was based in racism, and it's only continued throughout the history of America. The ban of weed was based in racism, y'all. Like, if you didn't know, the ban of cannabis, which they changed the name to marijuana because it sounded more Mexican, was based in racism. It was all based in racism. And so now America, 400 years later, can make right on at least this. Will they be on the right side of history? We'll see. Leave your comments down below. Before I get out of here, guys, be sure to hit the thumbs up button. Once again, I'm Jeff Lightsy Jr. from the Black Boss channel. Be sure to subscribe to the Black Boss channel because we have intelligent conversations like this every single day. And this was a big one. Like I said, it's only the beginning, but watch how this gets marketed. Just be sure to keep tune in and watch how this gets marketed because they want that Senate seat. Once again, I'm Jeff Lightsy Jr. at the Black Boss channel. Hit the thumbs up button on your way out. Thank you guys for listening. I'll see you next time.